Hi everyone, thank you very much. Nice to see so many of you in here this afternoon. So we're now going to talk about sport as entertainment, which I guess is primarily what sport is. But I suppose crucially for what we want to discuss this afternoon, future trends and changing audiences, because there's no doubt about it, this is not something that's standing still, and we will be talking about how far things have changed, but crucially what we can expect from the changing landscape, not just of sport, but I guess more important than anything else, how people are going to absorb their sport in years to come. So I'd like to welcome onto the stage, first of all, a man who's the Global Sports Marketing and Olympics Director for Barclays. Please put your hands together for Nathan Homer, who's with us this afternoon. A man who's made a big trip to be with us today. He's the founder, the chief executive of Spartan Race. I'm looking around, it looks like there's some people in here fit enough to be regular Spartan racers. Please welcome Joe DeSena to the panel as well. We're also joined today by the Global Chair of Sport for Twitter and also the Head of Sport for Twitter UK. Alex Trickett is on the panel. And finally, the founder and chair of Matchroom Sport. Please welcome also today Barry Hearn is with us. And at some point, this will be thrown to you as well. So we've got 40 minutes, as we've had previously, and this is called the catch box. It's a microphone, and the tendency of people is to catch it and then put it there while they ask their question. Please don't do that. Hold it up here and talk into that black bit. So when we get to the relevant moment in proceedings, I'll throw this out and hopefully not knock anybody out. Right, well, let's get going then. I suppose the thing that everybody wants to know, and this is the million-dollar question, what's the future for how people absorb sport across the world? What do you reckon? Let's come to you first of all, Barry, because you've been involved for a long time. And I guess you're probably someone that's seen a remarkable change though in the way we absorb sport.
It's complete change. I mean, who could have anticipated? I started in 1974 doing my first sporting event. So 42 years I've seen the change where you would get down on bended knees to get 15 minutes on grandstand. And now you find you've got these sports channels globally all over the world, but particularly in this country, in the UK, with Sky and BT and various other channels. But the big movement, obviously, that we are beginning to see in this country, and we're seeing it much more in Asia at a pace, is the movement onto streamed digital ways of viewing sports. In other words, your mobile, your tablet. And in China now, some people are estimating there's almost a 30% swing away from broadcast onto handheld appliances to watch your chosen sport. And this obviously opens the door to us in terms of monetization. You know, the old days of arm wrestling with grandstand was tough. Not so tough today with the proliferation of sports stations, but now we're coming onto a much more hybrid version of effectively pay-per-view. And when you're dealing with a market the size of China, the danger is that we are limited by our own imagination because the scale is beyond anything that's recognisable, and the potential is something that's going to change not just the amount of money that Barry Hearn's got.
Which is obviously the main priority for you, right? I mean, that's probably more important than anything else.
It's going to change the whole world of sport. The whole world of sport will change over the next 10 years, led by this domination of this massive market and new technology.
Barry's absolutely spot on, Alex, because when we're doing a live football game on BT Sport, I'll hop onto Twitter during the match, and the first 7 or 8 trends, almost without fail, are related to the live football match that's happening at that moment. People are watching it on the telly, but they're actually living through social media, aren't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, we call it the world's biggest sofa. I mean, at those moments, the thing that I think is constant with sport is that it's always real time, and it's always something that people won't time shift. You know, that Lightly Lads sort of going back way, the Lightly Lads episode where people didn't want to know the England score. People generally don't do that. They might time shift Game of Thrones even, you know, something as powerful as that on TV, but they want to watch sport in the moment. And they want to watch it not just with their immediate environment, who, you know, the mates in the pub or the family or whoever it is, but with this sofa full of people that include rival fans, current players, ex-players, pundits, experts, the organisers, because we all care about it and we want to converse in that moment, and that's what we work around.
And how does it work for you, Joe? Because I suppose it's kind of different if you're Barry and you're on the TV and you're on pay-per-view and you want people to be talking about your sport on social media because it drives everything. How relevant is that to Spartan Race? Because all you really want is people paying their money, turning up, competing and being part of your story.
It's interesting and it's awesome to be sitting next to the king of snooker and darts when we do Spartan races. So in 2000 we started, and we really couldn't get any traction. We were putting races on and very few people were attending the events. When social media came into play, 2008, 2009, 2000, it exploded because we could share that experience with our friends. Our friends saw pictures, they were jealous, they wanted to be there. You got bragging rights, you got to show off what you did, and it changed the game. We'll have 1 million participants this year from very few in 2000.
And how much do you attribute that to the drive on social media?
I would say, I mean, we have 2 television shows on NBC, and I say that because in the old days, not picking on you.
I can't believe he
could
looked
knock
at you there.
me out.
You know he was a boxer previously.
I know.
Mind you, you're pretty
we just
fit as well.
We just went through it. TV was it.
Yeah.
And we have 2 television shows which we were very excited to get, and they're great, but it's really social media and digital that's driving the game for us.
And I'm sure you
just to describe this a little bit more, because we talked about it earlier, to put it in context of running a business and monetizing, which is what we're all in the game for. We all love sport, but we want to monetize it. When we did Froch Groves at Wembley, my son said to me, it's a Wembley show, and I thought it's £1 million to stage. These guys are going to want huge amounts of money. This has got risk, and as an accountant, I like to minimise my risk. And my son said, we got social media, and this was like a couple of years ago. It was still quite fresh in our business, and my son sent a tweet out, one tweet, to his followers, which is a target market. Obviously, they follow him because of his boxing involvement, to say, if you want to know when these tickets go on sale before anyone else, send me your email address. We got 37,000 email addresses in a day, working on the basis that everyone's going to buy at least 2 tickets. We knew we were going to sell those 80,000 tickets out in less than an hour, which we did. And you know what we spent to achieve that final goal? Absolutely 0. Happy days.
And having gained so much for spending so little, Alex, how much money did Barry send to Twitter for that service free of charge?
I'm waiting. No, but look, I mean that's all great for us. I mean, what I would say, and not not for any other reason than it's absolutely true, is it's about how you use Twitter. And I think what Barry and Eddie do very successfully, and it's not limited to them, but I've noticed it with them, is they have that direct conversation with fans. I mean, you look at Barry's feed now. He's having direct correspondence with people he doesn't know, who either agree or maybe disagree with some of the things that he's doing.
They're fans. They buy tickets. They watch TV shows. They download on their app. They watch it on their mobile. Whether they agree or disagree, at least they're discussing it. At least they are involved. And of course, the byproduct of that is the benefit to sponsors as well, Nathan. And you know what you've achieved with the Premier League sponsorship. The numbers of people that associate you or your company with a particular event or sport via social media can only add to the media value you're getting for your sponsorship. It's really, I mean, it's not clever, is it? I mean, is there anyone in the room that doesn't understand it? If so, please leave, because you don't deserve to be here. This is so basic now in today's world, and it gives people like you the value.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, the enhanced value of partners who know how to use a lot of the new technologies is vast. And actually, you see wonderful examples and terrible examples. And a bit of the commercial piece we talked, when we look at what's changing, and again, looking at it from a global perspective, not UK, there's things like, the UK market, because of the way the television regulations are, is incredibly restrictive. If you're used to dealing with the TV market in most other places of the world, the opportunities as a business, as a brand, if you can do the right partnership and get the right rights, is huge. And we were talking, Alibaba, who no one would ever dreamt would become a media rights holder, are going to become one of the biggest media rights
For those
holders.
that don't know, just explain Alibaba quickly for those in the room.
I mean, Alibaba are certainly an online retailer, about 4 times the size of Amazon already, will be 10 times the size shortly. And Jack Ma, the genius behind it, realised a long time ago, It's all about how do you get eyeballs on his site, which again isn't rocket science for websites or anything else online. But he realised, well, actually, what drives people to come to places, the things they're passionate about. So don't attract them as a shopper, attract them as a viewer, and then we can do all of the commercialisation around that. So they are going to go and buy rights now, effectively, to attract people onto their site, and then they will deliver, I'm sure, a great product delivered by wonderful presenters, I'm sure. And,
Gary Lineker.
But they will surround it with the commercial things that will make, for them, paying top-end rights a drop in the ocean.
And also, if you bear in mind, I mean, these are rough figures, 10 million customers a day online, turnover last week somewhere around £20 billion in a week. And growing at a rate that within 5 years, Alibaba's turnover will be bigger than the gross national product of this country. And we are the 5th largest economy in the world. Put your head around that, people, and then start thinking, how can I get a bit of it?
Yeah. And actually, you know, we were saying, as a sponsor, that future is highly appealing.
Yeah.
Because actually, yes, there's some of the traditional benefits, like taking people to events that, you know, we do, and I know Giles was on earlier, and, you know, those guys do at HSP. We'll always want to take top clients to stuff. I mean, that's important. But actually, it's all about the mass connection you can get, and someone, you know, totally changing the way the rights are worked, the media, the way they're delivered through, is great news for us. You know, but let's be brutal. I would love someone like Alibaba driving with a hard commercial angle that you can connect straight into, because it's much easier to do work with than, you know, traditional broadcasters, being honest.
And Barry says this is not rocket science, this is just simple. I think where the rocket science comes is for all of the people like you four and everyone else in this room who's in a similar business, is to work out where this is going next. Because at the moment we know, for a really good example is the boxing on Sky, right? You can sell your tickets through social media. People talk about the Anthony Joshua knockout and they put pictures up on Twitter, so it generates loads of talk and loads of chatter. So people will buy tickets for the next fight, and you'll also make sure you've got Sky box office. 500,000 people, maybe more, up to 1 million, loads of money, lovely, works out fine. The question is that the model for the next 20 years? And I'm sure you do a lot of work to try and think about the future. What does it look like in 15 years?
Well, that's always the question we can't answer, because, like, you know, 15 years ago we didn't exist. I mean, things change at that pace that I think it's not possible. But I could speak to the nearer term, and I think well, if you went back even 3 years ago, Twitter, as an example, was 140 characters of text. That's effectively what it was. Now, you know, there's so much more than that in a single tweet. I mean, it is video, it's polls, it's direct engagement with the audience, and as I said before, I think live is that moment that won't change. You know, so for us, where we're thinking about it, and some of you will have read about it, you know, we're now in partnership with the NFL to stream their games on a Thursday. And that's not intended on our part as a sort of competitive move to oust a broadcast relationship that's already in place.
It probably does do that though, doesn't it?
I don't think it does. It's a complementary audience. So, you know, those games are still on the network.
Yeah. It's not very complimentary though if they choose to watch it on Twitter and not on NBC, is it?
I think the point is around that is that if you look at certain sports, probably most sports, and the audiences that go with those sports, there's a demographic, there's an age group that is harder to reach in traditional ways. And that's what we're trying to help with. So, you know, we mentioned earlier the mobile experience. You know, people, you know, 90% of people use video on mobile, on Twitter. It's a new way of consuming, and it's not going to change. But a linear broadcaster needs to face up to that and understand, look, how can I still be part of that experience? And that's why, you know, it's a partnership, and, you know, it will evolve as time goes on. But we're certainly looking at it as a very complementary experience.
And is it complementary, Barry, or is this going to be a challenge for the broadcasters? Do you think that, you know, BT, for example, when the Premier League rights come up next, they'll be bidding not just against Sky, but they'll be bidding against Google and YouTube and Twitter?
I think the challenges are there for everyone to see now, and it's going to be very interesting to see how people develop those challenges. You know, I think we're in a period of semi-consolidation at the moment as we all get used to this new world, and that takes time because a lot of management doesn't attract the amount of young thinking that's required today. And, you know, as I'm getting old, I'm in a very good position to look at these 20-odd-year-olds that come into my office as if they've just walked through a hedge backwards, and they don't go home. You know, they are the new age of young demographic employees that are going to take me into areas I could only dream of. But the challenge to the broadcasters is to move with the times, and I think you are already seeing that. Sky on the Go and things like Sky Go and things like that are just the beginning. I think we'll see some consolidation in the industries because there is a huge global market, but it's not a market for small players. It's going to be very difficult, for example, now for a Twitter, something new, technologically speaking, like a Twitter, to emerge today because the market is so much more mature. And, you know, it's $1 billion entry market these days, so it's not one for someone having a bright idea to sudden. Those bright idea kids are now working for Twitter or Google or wherever. But you will see, and I think you're starting to see the trend on, say, a Netflix looking at sport and saying, well, this is a very successful movie model, let's expand. I think sport's going to be a huge driver. You know, it used to be sex and gambling were the two big drivers of the old days of the internet, and they're being replaced now by movies and sport. And the country is a better place for it, of course. Some of us older are still stuck in a rut, but we won't go there, you know. But it's free these days, and it's ruined all the old operation. So, you know, I'm talking about the gambling market here, by the way.
You're saying you're a fan of gambling?
I'm a big fan of gambling because 90% of my sponsors are gambling companies because we deliver to a target audience and they make money out of us. I mean, that's basic. But the actual change in the mythology of how these companies are working is going to be fascinating to watch. You know, I'm a big fan of Sky, and I know you're a big fan of BT, or you'd be out of a job. But it's interesting to watch their think process.
Yeah.
You know, there seems to be different type of launches, some of which successful, some of which not. 3D. How much money did they all spend on 3D?
That was good, wasn't it? Wide on Sky.
Dead in the water. You know, now we've got 360 degree coming up next, which is fascinating for 5 minutes, but does it have long-term benefit? But the actual age of just being a simple broadcaster, appealing to a traditional 30-second advertising market, is, in my view, very limited.
And I think, you know, just going back to the BT example, you know, the stuff that BT does in terms of its app experience to complement the TV experience is groundbreaking as well. It's not just about putting it on social, although BT do use social very well in terms of driving, teasing, you know, putting good content out there. But actually, there's an app that gives you a different view on and allows you to cycle, you know, shuffle back. I missed the goal. I'm going to see the goal right now. The clip starts two seconds before the goal's scored. It's a new way of viewing, and it's a way of viewing that I think particularly a younger audience grasps and appreciates.
And obviously you've used social media to build Spartan Race into what it is today. What's next though? What do you do now with social media to keep on building the brand, keep on earning money, keep on expanding?
Well, it's very difficult because there are new channels that come out on not a daily basis, but quite often, right? Periscope. I remember when Instagram first came online, and so now we've got to develop and resource those new channels. It's difficult. Just touching the point you just covered, there isn't a market we're in 30 markets around the world, where traditional media player doesn't get in touch with us and say, hey, we want to do some business with you. And I think when you look at why they're wanting to do business with us, and these are some large media players, it's because if they could own events, as you all know, right? If they can own the sport, well, then they don't get disintermediated by the internet. And it's too expensive to own football or US football or whatever, right? And so it's much easier to go downstream and partner with a Spartan Race, or I would say darts, but that's
It's done.
done.
Does that work for you? Are you happy for that?
I am, because we couldn't, certainly today, we could not afford the amount we would have to spend to get that traditional media. At some point in the future, traditional media, you know, is on its way down, and new media is on its way up. Will probably be exclusively new media.
But from our point of view as well, that's no issue. In fact, it's a great opportunity. You know, sponsorship in the past was pretty traditional. Mm-hmm. The model was pretty traditional. Now, rights holders now, that, you know, it's about connecting with customers and clients. You know, and if you know what they're interested in, you know how they like to be connected to, actually, it opens up a vast new world that people, you know, like Joe, have set up things that they have that, you know what, if we want to talk to that, I don't know, 500,000 people, and that's what they're into, and they've got the ability through their channels to allow us in and allow us to be in there, that's a great new opportunity for us.
What do you look for from new deals? What are you after now? Because it used to just be how many people are going to watch that programme and we're going to sponsor it.
Yeah. And I think, as it was said, we're looking for particularly rights holders, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are plugging in the different parts, who are thinking in the new different ways and aren't just saying, well, I've signed that part of my deal and now I'm signing this part of my commercial deal and, actually these things overlap, because they're now totally interconnected. So, we're fundamentally looking for partners who understand that the way that you connect, sponsors do things to connect people, and the way those connections are now and are changing and are morphing means that some of the old hard, fast rules just don't work in the modern world, and the partners that are working the fastest to adopt them, and even if it involves grabbing their partners, putting them in a room and saying, look, we know what it says in the contracts, but there's a win-win-win here for all of us, are the ones that we're really looking for, and you can do it. I would say the Premier League have got some of the toughest broadcasters paying the biggest checks, and over the past couple of years, we've done a huge amount with them that probably wasn't in any of the contracts, but collectively we all wanted to go forward and do it. So, you hear a bit of resistance based on contracts. I don't believe that's true. And one of the biggest ones, just to throw out one area, is this piece of immediacy, reactive, instant, short-form content, which was a million miles away from what sponsors would ever have got involved with. And
how do you remain relevant in that space, though? Because whenever I look at that, I see it as not very commercial. I'm a big Twitter user. Every time I go on Twitter, if someone sent out a tweet with the hashtag SP at the end, I just disregard it. You can see them from a mile away. People that have been paid 100 grand tweet about Barclays. It's of no relevance to a lot of people, is it? So you have to work out a way around that.
Yeah, and I think that's just the whole content shift. So, the old days where you just stuck your name on someone else's content because it was just a sort of badging association exercise, I think we see those as gone. You've got to have a good story that's part of the immediacy and the reaction. So, at the weekend, not to bang on about, but, we gave a genuine fan the chance to present the trophy. And again, the Premier League have worked with us on that over a couple of years to make that possible and to allow it and to, go through all of the structures to get it to work. That was a genuine part of the story, and we were genuinely getting people on Twitter or on Facebook in the news talking about that story because it was part of it, and we had a role in it. Because we'd given the chance, and that's a good thing, nice thing.
But he banked with HSBC, didn't he?
So he didn't.
Was he with you?
Of course.
Was he a Barclays customer?
That wasn't a criteria.
Of course it was.
But it was it was 1 in 4 chance. Luckily he did. So
what a relief. I'm also interested when we talk about how things change, is how important people remain to you and I guess to Spartan Race as well, the people who are actually turning up on the day, the guys who are buying the tickets, because if you've got someone sitting at home and they're going to pay 15 quid for pay-per-view, you haven't got to print a ticket for them, look after them, do the security, provide a bar. They might tweet about the fact they're watching it, which might go out to 600 or 700 people who might also hop onto Sky Box Office and pay another 15 quid. So are they now more important than the 8,000 people that will pack into the O2?
The great thing about sport is that when you cut right down to it, it's about the sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you don't have that passion for actually loving the sport, it's not just about selling sponsorships. And you have to have something to work with. So the first thing you have to work with is atmosphere, fans. They have to come before everything else. Because if you're trying to sell an event to a broadcaster, you're trying to sell an event to a sponsor, they turn on the TV or they turn up at the venue and they see empty seats, disinterested fans, no atmosphere. It's a downer. So the first job of everything, and please, don't all start in the sports promotion business tomorrow. I've got enough competition as it is. The first thing is to make sure the fan is happy with the fan experience and the standard of play on display. Once you've got that, you've got something to build with. So the spin-off benefits are the guy sitting at home that can't make it, that's got actually $17.99, not $15.99. They're very important to make you the money, of course they are, but it's a chicken and egg. They don't turn up or get enthralled with that event unless they see a product that they approve of, that clearly other people find exciting because the crowds are there. I think football, by the way, is so far removed than any other sport we're talking about. Football creates its own rules. They're 100 times bigger than anything that we could dream of, because it is just a magnificent brand and they've done a superb job. But their danger is going down the pecking order, viewers looking at perhaps Football League and seeing empty stands The perception of a fan is the most important thing. When you channel hop, you've got a second and a half to get your imagination working. If the first thing you see is an empty stand, you're more likely to just ignore. So you need to get the imagination instantly and then deliver the experience. And the spin-off benefits in terms of pay-per-view or mobile or whatever, that comes afterwards. But if you forget, like when you're building a house, if you forget to put a good foundation down, the house is not going to stand still very long. And that's the foundation of all sport, is it's actually down to the basics of the sport itself.
We say over and over, the best thing to get a crowd is to start with a crowd. And so you need that competition, you need those athletes, you need sweating, you need that amazing event. When we look at Ironman, which became a billion-dollar brand, and we studied what made it Ironman, it was really the two women in the 1980s that collapsed on ABC television and crawled to the finish line that made that whole sport. So to your point, without those basics, without that foundation, there is no sport.
And I think despite all these changes, probably before we go to questions, which we will in a couple of minutes, so if you've got any questions, prime yourselves. I suppose the crucial thing is to keep on having personalities, because you need people that are fantastic personalities competing in your races, so other people want to take them on. You need as many personalities as you can to try and sell seats and try and sell tickets. You need a personality to attach your brand to. And every time people talk on social media, you know, the Leicester story is the Jamie Vardy story, effectively, and his name will trend after every game. All of you need the same thing, which is the superstar still.
Yeah, I mean, certainly true. I mean, Twitter is people to people, fundamentally. I mean, I always sort of run this analogy, like Man United, 7 million followers, you know, huge following. Wayne Rooney, 14 million. There's always a person who's more followed than a club, and that's because we as people relate to people more than organisations. And that's why the sort of personal interactions that, say, Barry does is so important. That's why, you know, when Everton, you know, discovered like a season ago that they had a fan who'd flown over for his first ever game from Malaysia, and, you know, he sent a tweet, next tweet was the game's called off. They saw that. And they contacted him on Twitter before he left the stadium, and they said, look, don't leave, this is a disaster, you've come all this way. And they gave him a sort of a money can't buy experience, which introduced him to all the players. Those types of interaction, I think, are what...
And to be fair, this season that's been better than watching Everton, probably.
That's also true.
Yeah. But you mustn't get carried away with making this overcomplicated. The danger in this new world is thinking everyone has to be a genius to understand, and it's exactly the opposite. The same rules of supply and demand apply, the same rules of common sense apply that we would operate in any business. If we were cleaning windows, you know, selling cars, we'd have the same rules. And in sport, the rule is very simple. It's a soap opera. So, you know, just imagine it's Dallas with balls or darts, or it's Crossroads with canoe paddles. You know, the personality is made through the script writing of the whole scenario of an event. To put together events that are attractive, that people say, wow, that looks exciting, or that's something I dream of doing, or in my case, if I was younger, you know, that's the sort of thing that you put together. And there's no bigger soap opera than football, you know, because there are so many stories within families of stories. And that's what generates social media activity and generates people. Most important thing of every event is you try to leave everyone with a smile on their face at the end of it, because the experience has been worth coming. And you try to give them something to go to work the next day and say, you won't believe what I saw last night. Once you've got that, that's fueled by all the other things. But the basic common sense of rules apply just as they've done for 100 years. The Christians and the Lions was never pay-per-view until the first Christian got tore to bits.
Everything changes, everything stays the same. Right. Who's got the first question today? This is where my ability to throw comes into question as well. Please don't put your hands up towards the back of the room.
Yeah, you're a good man.
You ready? Heads up, okay? Nice work.
Nice work.
Right. So when this gentleman's asked his question, your job is to throw it to the next person. So that's good news for me.
This is really a wind-up, yeah?
No, go on.
So the previous panel were about the Premier League, globalisation of the Premier League. Very interesting what Barry says about the fans being the centre of the universe. So the universe for the Premier League is a TV audience now. And the season ticket fans of clubs like West Ham and Crystal Palace, probably what, 90–95% of their home fan base. But they're all 35 to 60-year-olds. If you were, each of you were running a football club, and Barry, you have done, and you sponsor one, Nathan, if you were running a Premier League football club, would you be worried about the lack of millennials going to football matches?
Can I answer that? Because I had 19 years of sheer pleasure, as you know, running a massive football club. And I'm still gutted that we're not in the Olympic Stadium, but I said hello to David on the way out.
He said he was going to have a chat with you.
Yeah, people have a chat with me all the time. It's not too dangerous. I would be really, really concerned about Premier League football at the moment from the purposes of the live mix and the TV rate, the TV numbers. And it comes down, we're all guilty of greed. You know, no matter what, there's no one's an angel in this room, I'm sure. If they are, they're wasting their time. We want to maximise our commercials because that's a game that we're in. We don't score goals or make putts, do we? We judge ourselves on balance sheet and profit and loss accounts. That's our game. But on the bigger issue, going back to the point about fans being the most important, of course they've got to pay an appropriate amount of money, but when you're getting the type of income levels that comes from outside, you have the perfect opportunity to make sure that every ground is full of the right demographic because you've got the wherewithal to do it. So, you know, things like free season tickets for anyone under 16. There should be a certain percentage. The Premier League should say 15% of your ground must be given away. You're making 100 million quid a year. By the way, that's quite a lot of money. Some of us have to work weeks for that, you know? I'm serious. You've got to focus on that because it's a serious amount of money. But you've got the power and the ability to do that. When we started working on darts in 2003, I looked at the figures the other day, you know, £60,000 was our takings for the first World Championships and the prize money was tuppence. Now, we've made a point within the sport of darts, which has grown it to this enormous global business now, thank God, that we've always been full up, developed scarcity value, and then utilise it properly. Now, you'll always upset everyone because they'd like to get in for free. You never ever do that, by the way, because they don't turn up if they haven't paid. So maybe a token payment, even on season tickets. But you've got the ability to spread the gospel, to build your brand, and the money doesn't really count, does it? So you may be losing, what, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million on ticket revenue. The difference in value of your brand as a global exercise is 100 times more than that. And sometimes people take a very, very short cut. You know, do you have a girlfriend or do you have a wife?
But Premier League stadiums
You like
aren't
a
half empty,
long-term,
though.
sustainable business. You have to plan long-term. And they have an opportunity to do it, and I'm frightened they won't take that opportunity.
But Barry, the stadiums aren't half empty. I mean, West Ham have just sold 55,000 season tickets, the second most in the Premier League.
Don't kick it in the... I mean, don't tell me that. I could sell 55,000 tickets
You would have filled it with Leighton
if someone
Orient, of
gave
course.
me a stadium for free. I mean, I could give away 55,000 tickets.
but-
It doesn't matter.
But the
does
point
it?
is, they've sold them, and Premier League grounds are still full. I'm a Norwich City fan. We've got a waiting list of 2,000.
Norwich have got a waiting list because they're
Nothing
waiting
else
to see if
happens in
they ever
Norwich.
score a goal.
And we don't score a goal.
But there is still the wrong demographic mix is the point we're making. We're not doing enough to encourage the next generation. You know, we can't just become a hospitality unit on a blanket scale. I mean, this is a deep conversation, guys, and goes on for weeks. But when you study demographics and you study target audience, you realise that the Premier League are not doing it. They're getting to the stage of being complacent. And complacency in any business is the beginning of your business dropping away. The day you don't set targets of where you're trying to get to is the day that you give up running a successful and a progressive business. And that's the danger for Premier League.
Okay, next question. We've only got about 6 minutes left, so where is the mic going to be thrown to now? Okay, yeah, that's probably a more sensible approach, isn't it?
Come on. Pass it along.
Right, come on, throw the mic. Let's see how far we get. This is more fun anyway. Come on.
Pass it along.
Ooh. All right. This was a great idea. Whoever had this idea, it won't be here next year.
Find sports audience in the middle, none of whom tried to catch it. None of whom tried to throw it.
Right, lovely. Here we go.
Tremendous pressure for this to be a good question now. I'm James from Lucasade Sport. Question for Joe. What is your long-term ambition for Spartan racing? Or what do you see the future of obstacle course racing being like? Do you see it being an Olympic sport in, say, 20 years?
Well, a lot less than 20 years. Yeah, we're working on it being in the Olympics. I've got meetings next week we're not supposed to talk about, but I'm very, very focused on that because for me, for us, there's always a concern, as you just pointed out. You can't get complacent. We can't end up with this being a fad. It's more likely to be very sticky and a real business if we can get an Olympic bid in there. And I think we've figured out a way to do it, we hope. So that's the big focus. And to do that, we've got to be in 40 plus countries. And so you could imagine just trying to keep the wheels on every day, growing as fast as we're growing and planting flags in each country. So that keeps us extremely busy. And we just want to change lives. I mean, we started out to change lives. I get 600 emails a day, and most of those emails are about somebody that quit smoking, somebody that's back with their wife or their husband, somebody that lost 100 pounds, somebody that had PTSD coming out of the military, and it's just transformed them because they maybe couldn't play basketball or football or whatever because they weren't that good at that sport, but this is like a real live video game. They feel alive again. So I hope that answered the question.
When do you hope? Which Olympic Games would you hope to have Spartan race?
I mean, if it was up to me, I'd be in Rio. But
yeah, that's maybe a little bit tight.
But
could it be as soon as 2020?
I mean, it'd be great. I'm moving to Japan next year, so we'll see.
They've already made the choice. So.
So 2024.
These guys are realists. But when we started Spartan,
Don't deal in facts. Come on.
Everybody said we were crazy. It would never work. And most of the business I've started throughout my life, I've heard that. And to be honest with you, when I went out and said this is going to be an Olympic sport, I didn't even know how would I even make that happen. But I figured, let me just throw it out there, and then you're back into it, and all the stars are starting to align. So
Get ready for years and years of frustration and bureaucracy. Good luck.
this is my positive coach.
Great. He's not coming back again. Another question. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Anything else? Anyone else in the room? Nobody wants to take the catch box? Right, well, as this clock ticks down to 1 minute, then we'll say thank you all very much for being here, and please put your hands together for the panel for this afternoon's session. Thank you very much, gentlemen.